This question about coherence, I'm glad you asked this. I think one of the reasons why the Heartmath folks are magnetically attracted to exchange is because the same way we are attracted to what they do, these are all vehicles that can be brought together. That it's not an either or, it's a both and. You can learn to bring different types of tools and wisdoms and traditions together. And what's really interesting is there was a keynote that I gave last year at one point. This is before I'd ever really connected with the Heartmath folks or read anything they'd ever written. And one of the things that I had said in this message is that this work creates social coherence. It creates collective coherence. And I think when the Heartmath folks heard us talking about what we do in a conference setting, and these are very smart individuals who have an incredible tool, but when I asked them, how do you approach your conference design, they immediately admitted that what they're doing is 1.0, right? And they immediately realized, yeah, we need to add to our tool other tools so that we're actually unlocking the wisdom of the people that show up at our events. These are very smart individuals. So when they heard about the idea of just moving learning environments from passive to active, they started to lean in. And then they heard about the idea of, oh, we could crowdsource the wisdom in the room. They started to lean in. And I want to share this story with you because this might be a great lesson for all of you in selling this work. On one of the, and all of my calls with them were recorded. I don't know if we have permission, but if we get permission, we could share those with the group at some point.
They're pretty raw calls, so we kind of said we'll just keep a lot of those strategy calls on the back end, but there is,
That was a polite way of saying we won't be sharing them. I love that. They were pretty raw. Meaning it was like total transparency of like, here's what's working, here's what's not working. And I was very direct with them around like, you do this, here's the outcome you're gonna get. But I will share just a quick story of what I think was on one of the calls, the unlocking moment where everything just opened up. And by the way, the entire first call, 60 to 90 minutes, the first call, I asked questions for about 75 minutes. I literally just kept asking questions. And I can tell you what those questions were, because it's the same questions we ask when we design this work, which you're going to be doing starting this afternoon. And the first question I asked them is, I said, what are the outcomes that you want to get out of this event, right? What are the outcomes that you want to get out of this event? Now you might think, oh, that's obvious, but I want you to notice there's an unpacking here. And they said, well, we want to get this, this, or this. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask this differently. Tell me who each of the stakeholders are who are attending this event, and what are the outcomes that you want for every one of your stakeholders? And they immediately realized, they admitted it. They said, we've not thought about this, right? Because it's easy to think we're putting on an event, the reason is to raise global consciousness of humanity. That's their transcendent title. But that's not the sole outcome. That's the transcendent aspiration. They are a business, so to speak, right? Their attendees have specific outcomes they need to get clear on. So long story longer, I said to them, you need to have a list of who's every stakeholder who's a part of this event. And you can't just say attendees. What types of attendees? You have attendees who are first-timers. You have attendees who are part of your certified training program. You should have a completely different articulated list of what are your outcomes for these attendees. So that was the first probably 20 minutes is I interviewed them. And I had each one of them answer the question, who is coming and what are your desired outcomes for each attendee? Now, I'm going to tell you, and Steve wouldn't mind this, I was testing them at every step of the way. Because at no point did they answer, what are the outcomes that we want for us as a stakeholder? So at the end of about 15 minutes, I said, what about you as a stakeholder? And they go, oh, well, this is our annual fundraiser. Guess where that conversation went? I said, fundraising? You want to do fundraising? How much do you raise at your events, right? Yeah. And they don't. There is no auction at their events, right? I wasn't planning on talking about this stuff, but this is where they as a team, they're just like me. They're out there doing so much good in the world that they love being the artists and the engineers, that they just had never taken the time to do some basic working on the event because they're so in it. I make the same mistakes in my business. So I asked them, what are your outcomes, right? Who are you trying to serve? And then my next question was, tell me what the ingredients are that you're working with for your event. Like, what are the current puzzle pieces? Because if you get brought into an event that's already been thought of a little bit, which, by the way, for those of you that are going to be helping other people's events, you should assume you're going to be brought in after they already have a lot of ideas. It's not the norm that someone says, here's a blank canvas, design a 5-day retreat. That doesn't happen very often. What's far more normal is you talk to someone who's already got something planned. So you have to know how to ask them, what are the puzzle pieces that you're already working with? And how are you planning on using those puzzle pieces? And so they started to share with me. They said, well, we've got this puzzle piece and this puzzle piece. And then I asked them, hey, what percentage of, I said, I'm going to ask you some questions about the style of the event. And I said, what percentage of the time are people actively engaged versus passively engaged? Now, they're very smart. They didn't need me to define that, but they immediately realized just by me asking the question that it was a good question to be asking. And they had some ways of doing active learning. However, they realized that they weren't consciously asking the question, what is the mixture that we want at our conference? So if you're not conscious of that, with a group of smart people, it ends up defaulting in real time towards just information sharing, right? So in the next question I asked them is, how much of the conference do you want it to be about helping people to learn tools versus getting them to connect to the bigger global movement? They were very clear on that answer, but they as a team had never had a chance to actually hear each other's answers. What was neat is they were all aligned. They were like, well, we want both. We want there to be a balance of tools, and we want some very specific conversations about the global movement. So of course, my next question was, how do you plan on doing that? What's an example of when or where you would like to get people engaged? Now, Roland, the head scientist, he said, John, I love this conversation. He said, I'd like to get your opinion right now on one of the things I was going to do. He said, over dinner, I was going to kind of throw the question out at the opening dinner to the group of what could the world look like one day if we lived in a world of, total coherence, right? And I'm editorializing here. And I asked him, I said, so it sounds like an important question. And so my next question was, what are you going to have them do with that question? Like literally, what's the choreography? Like you're going to present that. What are they going to do? How are they going to work with that question? And that was the point where he and I think others realized, you can really go very deep and technical in thinking about how do we engage a group. Because I think his intent was, I'm going to kind of toss it out there and maybe they'll have some dinner conversation about it. And I said to him, if you do that, you'll probably spark some great dinner conversation, right? I said, but let me ask you this. Would you be interested in hearing a way where 100% of the group is 100% engaged in that question, but they're not just answering it by chance, maybe over dinner, but they're actually creating innovations and prototypes and answers to what that future could look like, and they're all presenting it to each other. And what do you think his answer was? Tell me a little bit more, right? And by the way, you notice everything I'm doing is still questions. I'm not asserting, I'm asking. What's your plan here? What are you going to do here? How would this sound? Would you be interested in this? Now, when he said, of course, and a few other individuals on that call, they're now leaning in. I said, can I share with you a little bit about our philosophical approach to how we design large events? By the way, this was about, and we should go watch the tape, this was about minute 70 of 90 minutes. So it's literally about an hour of asking questions, and then it's a long period of questions, and then it's me saying, would you like to hear about our philosophies? And they were like, yes. And the interesting thing is I think they already understood a lot of our philosophies by my questions. But I said, here's some of our philosophies. I said, number one, and I drew a picture, and I should draw the picture for you. Who loves a good picture, yeah? Yeah. So I said, number one, can all of you see the flip chart where it's at right now? I said, number one, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help learning environments go from a few people having the answers, right? We call this learning 1.0. Or in leadership environments, same thing, right? When I'm selling leadership, I'm saying this, we call this command and control. In learning environments, I say we call this the industrial way of teaching. Right? A few people are sharing all the answers. And I said, one of the guiding principles of our philosophy is that we want to help learning environments go from a few people having the answers, right? We call this learning 1.0. In leadership environments, same thing, right? In learning environments, I say we call this the industrial way of teaching. Right? A few people are sharing all the answers. is how do we tap into the wisdom of many? I said, you're probably attracting some really smart people to this global conference, aren't you? They're like, yeah, these are really incredible people. And I said, so what we're all about is how do you take a brilliant question like that, Roland, and bring it to as many people as possible? And we're really interested in how do you transform learning environments to where it's not only a few people sharing great answers. Every word matters there. It's not only a few people sharing great answers. You notice I didn't say instead of. Because if I say instead of, what's Roland's job, right? I'm saying there's no need for you. I'm saying it's not only a few of you sharing great wisdom and